At Christmas dinner, my 9-year-old son got a plate of cold leftovers while everyone ate hot food. They said he should be grateful. He whispered, "Dad, do the thing you promised." 5 minutes later, my mother-in-law's face went white and the table erupted in chaos. Hey Reddit, my mother-in-law served my kid cold leftovers at Christmas dinner while everyone else got a hot meal. Told him to be grateful for scraps. So I kept the promise I made to my son and walked out. She thought family loyalty would keep me in line. A divorce lawyer disagreed. So I'm Jake, 34, been running an auto repair shop in Pine Ridge, Wisconsin for the past 12 years. Started from nothing, built it up myself, work 70-hour weeks sometimes. The kind of job where your hands are permanently stained with grease and you smell like motor oil even after 3 showers. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps a roof over my family's head. When I started the shop at 22, I was a kid with more ambition than sense. Took out a business loan, worked 16-hour days, learned everything myself because I couldn't afford help. First year, I made less than minimum wage, but I was building something mine. By year 5, I'd paid off the loan and the shop was turning real profit. Now I've got 4 mechanics, steady contracts, and a reputation for quality work. We're doing okay. Better than okay. Been married to Lauren for 12 years. Met her at a summer festival when I was 22, and stupid enough to think love conquered all. She was visiting from Madison, staying with her aunt for the summer, and I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Dark hair, bright smile, laughed at my terrible jokes. We spent that whole summer together. By September, I was sure I'd found my person. We got married that December because when you're young and in love, waiting seems pointless. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The way she'd get quiet when I talked about the shop. The way she'd change the subject when I mentioned plans for the future. The way she never quite defended me when her family made their comments. But when you're 22 and convinced you found your soulmate, you don't see red flags. You see challenges you'll overcome together. The real problem started about a week after the wedding when I got to know Patricia properly. Patricia Bennett was a professional at making you feel small while pretending to care. Every insult came wrapped in concern. Every criticism disguised as helpful advice. She'd perfected this skill over decades, and she wielded it like a surgeon with a scalpel. Precise, deliberate, designed to cut deep without leaving visible scars. She'd worked as a regional manager for some insurance company for 30 years. Retired at 55, with a solid pension and enough money to live comfortably in that big house on Maple Street. The kind of house with a formal dining room nobody actually uses, and white carpets that make you nervous just looking at them. Her second husband, Todd, was a consultant who traveled for work constantly. Nice enough guy on his own, but he'd learned early to just agree with Patricia and stay out of her way. Lauren's biological father had left when she was 12. Classic midlife crisis story. Ran off with someone from his office, moved to Florida, barely stayed in touch. Patricia had raised Lauren and her brother Kyle, mostly alone while building her career, and she never let anyone forget it. Every conversation eventually circled back to her sacrifices. The long hours she'd worked, the opportunities she'd given up, how she'd single-handedly raised 2 successful kids with no help from anyone. I respected that initially. Single mother making it work while climbing the corporate ladder? That takes real strength. But over time I realized Patricia didn't want respect. She wanted control. She'd paid her dues raising kids alone, and now everyone in her orbit owed her eternal gratitude and complete compliance. First time she came to visit our apartment, maybe 4 days after the wedding, I knew we were in trouble. She walked through our little 2-bedroom place like a health inspector at a failing restaurant, touched our secondhand couch with just her fingertips, looked at our thrift store coffee table with this expression like she smelled something bad, checked the kitchen with pursed lips, stood in the bathroom doorway without actually going in. Finally, she sat down on that couch with visible reluctance and delivered the line that would set the tone for the next 12 years. Well, it's cozy. You'll want something bigger once you get a real career going, Jake. I laughed it off, made some joke about how we were just starting out. Lauren squeezed my hand hard under the table, her signal for drop it. I dropped it. But Patricia wasn't done. She mentioned the neighborhood wasn't great, said the building looked like it had maintenance issues, wondered out loud how we could possibly plan for a family in such a small space. Each comment delivered with that same concerned smile, that same tone that made you question if she was insulting you or just being practical. The comments never stopped. They just multiplied and evolved. When I told her about my plan to open the repair shop, she said, "How ambitious. Though the failure rate for small businesses is quite high. I hope you're prepared for that reality." When I signed the lease on the shop space, she said, "Renting. Probably wise for now." When I paid off the business loan 2 years early after busting my rear working 80-hour weeks, she said, "It's nice that you're self-employed. No corporate ladder to worry about climbing." When we bought our first house, Patricia walked through making actual notes on a pad. "The bones are good. You'll want to gut the kitchen eventually. But yes, I suppose it's a start for you too." A start. Everything I accomplished was just a preliminary step towards something that might actually matter someday. The worst was when Danny was born. I was in the hospital room holding my 3-hour-old son, crying because I'd never felt anything that powerful in my life. And Patricia looked at this perfect tiny human and said, "He's lovely. I do hope he has Lauren's drive and ambition. Boys really need that to succeed in this world." She looked at my newborn son and decided he'd probably turn out like me, which in Patricia's world meant he was already starting behind. Every family dinner, every holiday, every visit was another opportunity for these little cuts. Never anything big enough to call out directly. Never anything I could point to and say, "That was cruel," without sounding oversensitive. Just a constant drip of criticism disguised as concern. And Lauren's response was always the same. "That's just how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's from a different generation. She's just trying to help. You're being too sensitive." But here's what I started to notice over the years. Patricia saved her sharpest comments for when Lauren wasn't in the room. Or she'd say things right in front of Lauren, but in that tone that made it sound like friendly advice instead of an insult. And Lauren would either miss it entirely or pretend she missed it. Either way, she never once stood up for me. Not once in 12 years. You know what the worst part was? I started to believe it. Not consciously. But somewhere deep down, Patricia's constant criticism started to take root. I'd look at the shop and think maybe it wasn't that impressive. Look at our house and see all the things that weren't updated instead of being proud we owned it. Look at my work-stained hands and wonder if Lauren regretted marrying a mechanic instead of some corporate guy in a suit. And Danny. God, Danny got the worst of it. Our son is 9 now. Small for his age, incredibly bright, loves to read and build things and ask questions about how everything works. Reminds me of myself at that age. Curious about the world. Eager to learn. The kind of kid teachers love because he actually cares about understanding things. But Patricia treated him exactly like she treated me. Every achievement came with a qualifier. Every accomplishment got diminished. When he won his school spelling bee in 3rd grade after studying those words for weeks, Patricia's response was, "Well, I imagine the competition wasn't very difficult at a school this size. Still, good job, I suppose." When his art teacher displayed his clay sculpture in the hallway because she thought it was genuinely impressive, Patricia said, "That's nice, dear. Though you really should focus more on activities that will help with college applications. Art is more of a hobby." The kid was 8 years old, and she was talking about college applications. When he got Student of the Month for September, Patricia said, "How many students are in your class?" "Oh, 22. So really it's just a matter of time before everyone gets it." Every single thing he did got dismissed as either easy, lucky, or not really that impressive. And I watched it do to him what it had done to me. Watched this bright, confident kid start to doubt himself. Start to apologize for being excited about things. Start to assume nothing he did would ever quite be good enough. Lauren saw it happening. Had to have seen it. But every time I brought it up, she'd defend her mother. She's just trying to help him set realistic expectations. She wants him to be prepared for how competitive the world is. You're being too sensitive on his behalf. Danny's fine. But Danny wasn't fine. I could see it in his eyes. The way he'd light up about something and then immediately dampen that excitement. The way he'd show me a drawing he was proud of and then say, "But it's not that good," before I could even respond. The way he'd flinch slightly when Patricia started talking, bracing for whatever criticism was coming. And I kept my mouth shut, kept the peace. Told myself it wasn't that bad, that Danny would toughen up, that eventually Patricia would ease off, until 3 months ago when everything changed. We were in the garage together on a Saturday. I was doing an oil change on Mrs. Thompson's Accord, and Danny was handing me tools, asking his usual questions about how engines work. Good kid stuff, father-son bonding, the kind of afternoon I lived for. He got quiet after a while. Then he asked the question that broke my heart. "Dad, why doesn't Grandma Patricia like me?" I put down the wrench and looked at my kid. 9 years old, grease smudge on his cheek, holding a socket wrench and trying not to cry. "She likes you, buddy." "No, she doesn't. She always says stuff that makes me feel bad. Like when I showed her my science project, and she said it was fine, but I should have done more research. Or when I made her that card for her birthday, and she said my handwriting looked messy. Or when I got the Student of the Month award, and she said everyone gets it eventually. He'd been keeping track, cataloging every criticism, carrying them around like weights in his pockets. Sometimes people show they care in weird ways, I said, knowing it was a weak answer, even as the words left my mouth. But it doesn't feel like she cares. It feels like she thinks I'm not good enough. And there it was. The thing I'd been avoiding seeing for 9 years. My son felt exactly the way I'd felt for 12 years. Not good enough. Never good enough. Constantly failing to meet standards that shifted just out of reach every time you got close. I pulled him into a hug right there in the garage, getting motor oil all over both of us. Listen to me. You are good enough. You're smart and kind and curious and creative. Some people in this world won't see that. And that's their problem, not yours. But she's family. Isn't family supposed to see the good stuff? Man, the wisdom of kids asking the questions adults are too afraid to face. Yeah, they're supposed to. Danny pulled back and looked at me with these serious eyes that no 9-year-old should have. Will you stand up for me if she does it again? Really stand up for me? Not just tell her to be nice? That's when I made the promise. The promise that would end my marriage and start the hardest 6 months of my life. If she ever hurts you again, really hurts you, I'll do whatever it takes to protect you, even if it makes people mad, even if it causes problems. You're my son, and nobody gets to make you feel small. Nobody. Deal? Deal. We shook on it like two men making a business agreement. His hand was small in mine, still had that kid's softness, but his grip was firm. He believed me, trusted me to keep that promise. I thought maybe Patricia would ease up. Maybe I'd never have to actually follow through. Maybe things would get better on their own. 3 months later, Christmas dinner proved me wrong in the worst possible way. Patricia had insisted on hosting Christmas at her place like she did every year. Big house, formal dining room, the whole production. Lauren's brother Kyle was there with his wife and their 2 kids. Todd was there doing his usual fade-into-the-background routine. And of course, Patricia was in full hostess mode, running the show like a general commanding troops. The day had been tense from the start. Patricia made comments about the gifts we brought being nice, but not quite what she would have chosen. Pointed out that Danny's hair needed a trim. Mentioned I looked like I'd gained weight. Just her usual routine of small cuts disguised as observations. But dinner was when it all fell apart. Everyone gathered in that formal dining room with the fancy china that probably cost more than my truck. Patricia brought out food family style, making a big production of serving each person. Turkey, ham, mashed potatoes, 3 kinds of vegetables, rolls, the whole traditional Christmas spread. She served each person individually, asking about portions, making sure everyone got exactly what they wanted. Then she got to Danny. She went to the kitchen and came back with a plate, set it in front of him with this smile, and my stomach dropped. The plate was from the refrigerator. Cold turkey, cold mashed potatoes that had that dried out look, cold green beans, leftovers from something she'd made days ago, still in that crusty state that only happens when food sits in the fridge too long. Everyone at the table went silent, all eyes on that plate, then quickly looked away, pretending they hadn't noticed. There you go, sweetie, Patricia said, still smiling. I know you're a picky eater, so I saved you some simple food. Nothing too overwhelming. Danny stared at his plate, then looked at everyone else's plates piled high with hot, fresh food. Then back at his own cold plate. His face went red. His hands started to shake slightly. Grandma, can I have hot food like everyone else? This is perfectly good food, Danny. Some children don't get any Christmas dinner at all. You should be grateful for what you have. The table stayed silent. Nobody said a word. Kyle looked uncomfortable but didn't speak up. Todd studied his own plate intensely. Lauren opened her mouth but closed it again without saying anything. And Danny, my 9-year-old son, looked at that cold plate and understood exactly what was happening. His grandmother had deliberately served him inferior food to teach him some lesson about being grateful, or knowing his place, or whatever twisted logic she'd used to justify it, in front of the whole family. On Christmas. He turned to me, tugged my sleeve, leaned close and whispered so only I could hear. Dad, can you do the thing you promised if they hurt me again? I looked at my kid, looked at that cold plate of leftovers, looked at Patricia sitting there with that satisfied expression, looked at Lauren who was staring at her own plate, refusing to meet my eyes, looked at Kyle and Todd and everyone else at that table who was going to pretend this was normal and fine and not incredibly messed up. And I thought about that promise in the garage 3 months ago. So I stood up. Get your coat, Danny. We're leaving. The table exploded. Patricia's face went from satisfied to shocked to outraged in about 2 seconds. Excuse me? I said we're leaving. Danny, go get your coat from the front closet. Jake, sit down. Lauren hissed across the table. You're making a scene. No, I'm keeping a promise to my son. Come on, buddy. Danny didn't need to be told twice. He pushed back from the table and headed for the front door, like the house was on fire. Patricia found her voice. How dare you? I spent all day preparing this dinner and you're going to storm out like a child over nothing. Over nothing? I turned to face her directly. You served my 9-year-old son cold leftovers from the refrigerator while everyone else got a hot meal. You did it deliberately. You wanted to teach him some lesson about being grateful by making him feel less than everyone else at this table. He's a picky eater. I was being considerate. That's a lie and you know it. He eats everything I make at home. He's not picky. You did this to hurt him, and you did it in front of everyone so he'd feel humiliated. Kyle jumped up. You don't talk to our mother like that. Your mother just emotionally abused my son at Christmas dinner. So yeah, I'm going to talk to her like that. Boys don't need to be coddled, Patricia said, her voice cold now. He needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around him. He's 9 years old. My voice rose for the first time. He's a kid, and you're supposed to be his grandmother. You're supposed to love him and support him, not tear him down at every opportunity. Lauren stood up. Jake, please. Let's just sit down and finish dinner. We can talk about this later. There's nothing to talk about. Your mother served your son cold food to humiliate him, and you sat there and let it happen, just like you always do, just like you've let her do to both of us for 12 years. Don't you dare blame me for your oversensitivity. Oversensitivity? Lauren, open your eyes. Look at that plate. Look at what your mother did and tell me that's normal. Tell me that's loving. Tell me that's okay. She couldn't. She just stood there with tears starting to form, mouth opening and closing, unable to form words that would make this anything other than what it was. Todd spoke up for the first time. Maybe everyone should just calm down and... No, I cut him off. We're not calming down. We're not pretending this is fine. We're not sitting back down like nothing happened. We're leaving. If you walk out that door, Patricia said, her voice like ice, don't expect to be welcomed back. I looked at her. This woman who'd spent 12 years making me feel worthless. Who'd started doing the same thing to my son. Who just served a child cold leftovers on Christmas to prove some twisted point about hierarchy and gratitude. Good. I wouldn't want to come back to a place where my son gets treated like garbage. Danny was waiting by the front door with his coat already on, eyes wide, watching this all unfold. Let's go, buddy. We walked out into the December cold, got in my truck, pulled out of that driveway with my phone already starting to buzz with incoming calls and texts. Are you mad at me? Danny asked quietly. I pulled over into a gas station parking lot, shifted into park, and turned to face him. Listen to me very carefully. I am not mad at you. I'm mad at them. What Grandma Patricia did tonight was wrong. She tried to make you feel small and worthless, and I will never let anyone do that to you. Not her, not anyone. You deserve better than that. You understand? He nodded, and I watched his whole body relax. Like he'd been holding his breath since we left. Where are we going? Somewhere that treats you like the amazing kid you are. We ended up at Betty's Diner on Highway 12, one of those old-school places with vinyl booths and a waitress who calls everyone hon. They were open on Christmas, serving turkey dinner for people who didn't have anywhere else to go. We sat in a booth in the back, ordered 2 specials, and had the best Christmas dinner of my life. Danny told me about the book he was reading, some fantasy thing with dragons and magic. I told him about a '67 Camaro I had in the shop that needed a complete engine rebuild. We talked about school and his friends and this kid in his class who was bullying people and how Danny had stood up to him. Normal dad and son conversation. The kind we should have been having all day instead of walking on eggshells around Patricia's toxic behavior. The food was good. The company was better. And for the first time in years, I felt like I'd done exactly the right thing. We got home around 9. Lauren's car was already in the driveway, and I knew what was coming. She was waiting in the living room, still in her Christmas dress, eyes red, expression hard. Soon as we walked in, she told Danny to go to his room without even looking at him. Danny glanced at me. I nodded. It's okay, buddy. Head upstairs. He went, but I knew he'd be sitting at the top of the stairs listening to every word. That's what I would have done at his age. Lauren waited until she heard his bedroom door close. How could you humiliate my family like that? I didn't humiliate anyone. Your mother did that herself. That's your version. That's what happened. She served Danny cold leftovers while everyone else got a hot meal. She did it deliberately to hurt him. She was trying to teach him a lesson about being grateful. He's 9 years old, Lauren. He doesn't need lessons about gratitude delivered through humiliation. He needs to know his family loves him and values him. Your mother did the exact opposite. I was trying to keep the peace. At the cost of our son's dignity, at the cost of his self-worth, how many times are you going to sacrifice him to make your mother happy? Her face flushed. Don't you turn this around on me. You're the one who caused a scene. You're the one who insulted my mother in her own home. You're the one who dragged Danny out of there to prove some point. Someone had to protect him since you clearly weren't going to. The words landed like a slap. Lauren's face went pale, then red again with anger. How dare you question my love for my son? I'm not questioning your love. I'm questioning your judgment, your priorities. Every single time there's a conflict between your mother and your family, you choose her. Every single time. That is not true. So I laid it all out. Every incident over the past 9 years. Every time Patricia had torn Danny down, and Lauren had defended it as constructive criticism. The spelling bee that wasn't impressive because the school was small. The art project that was nice but not practical. The Student of the Month award that everyone gets eventually. The handwriting that needed work. The birthday card that wasn't quite good enough. Every moment that should have been celebrated that got diminished instead. And tonight, I finished. Tonight she served him cold food on Christmas and called it a lesson. And you said nothing. You sat there and let it happen because standing up to your mother is more uncomfortable than watching your son get hurt. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was shaking. If you hate my family so much, maybe you should leave. I looked at my wife, searched her face for any sign she didn't mean it, but her expression was set, determined. She'd made her choice, just like she'd made it every time for the past 12 years. Her mother over her husband, her mother over her son, her mother over everything. You want me to leave? I want you to figure out if you can be part of this family without constantly attacking my mother. I defended our son. That's not attacking. It is to her. It is to me. Do you know what she said after you left? She cried, Jake. She actually cried. Said she was trying her best to be a good grandmother, and you made her feel like a monster. I laughed. Bitter sound with zero humor. She's crying because for the first time in 12 years, someone stood up to her. That's not being victimized. That's being held accountable. Get out, Lauren said quietly. Lauren, I said get out. Pack a bag. Go stay somewhere else. I can't even look at you right now. I stood there suspended in that moment, trying to find words that would pull us back from this edge. But looking at her face, at the coldness in her eyes, I realized there were no right words. This had been building for 12 years. Tonight was just when it finally broke open. Okay, I'll go, but I'm not leaving Danny here. You can't just take him. Watch me. I went upstairs. Danny was sitting on his bed, fully dressed, clearly having heard every word. His face was pale, eyes red-rimmed. He looked up when I came in with this expression of resignation that broke my heart all over again. Pack some clothes, buddy. We're staying somewhere else for a few days. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Direct question from a 9-year-old who just watched his family implode. I don't know yet, but right now we need some space from each other, and I need to make sure you're somewhere safe. Grandma's house doesn't feel safe. I know. This house doesn't feel safe anymore either. We packed quickly. Weeks worth of clothes. His favorite books. The stuffed dog he pretended he was too old for, but still slept with. I grabbed some of my own things from the bedroom, while Lauren stood in the hallway watching with arms crossed, expression unreadable. Where are you going? She asked as we headed for the door. Motel for tonight. After that, I'll figure it out. This is ridiculous. You're being absolutely ridiculous. I turned at the door, Danny's hand in mine. No. For the first time in 12 years, I'm being a father. That's all I'm being. We walked out into the December night. The temperature had dropped, snow starting to fall. Danny climbed into the truck without complaint, buckled himself in, stared straight ahead as I started the engine. As we pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Lauren was silhouetted in the doorway, phone already to her ear, calling her mother, no doubt, getting her version validated, being told I was the bad guy. The cycle continuing without me there to take it anymore. The Pine Ridge Inn wasn't much, but it was clean. Got a room with 2 beds. Carried our bags inside. The place smelled like industrial cleaner and old carpet, but it was warm, and the door locked, and right now that was enough. Danny sat on one of the beds looking small and lost. I pulled out my phone and ordered pizza from Gino's, the only place open on Christmas night. While we waited for delivery, I called my sister in Minnesota. She answered on the second ring. Jake, it's almost 10 on Christmas. What's wrong? I gave her the abbreviated version, keeping my voice low so Danny wouldn't hear all the details. When I finished, there was a long pause. About damn time, she said finally. What? I've been waiting for you to finally stand up to that woman for years. Mom and I talk about it whenever you're not around. We could see what she was doing, what it was doing to you and Danny. You never said anything? Would you have listened? I thought about it. Probably not. Maybe not. Sometimes people have to come to realizations on their own. How's Danny? I looked at my son, who was flipping through TV channels without really watching anything. Shaken, sad, but he'll be okay. And you? Ask me in a few days. We talked for a few more minutes before I hung up. The pizza arrived and Danny and I ate sitting on motel beds, watching some animated movie neither of us really cared about. When he finally fell asleep, I sat in the chair by the window and stared out at the parking lot. My phone kept buzzing. Texts from Lauren, calls from numbers I didn't recognize, probably Patricia or Kyle using different phones to get through. I ignored all of them. Whatever they had to say could wait until morning. Tomorrow I'd need to find real housing. Tomorrow I'd need to call a lawyer. Tomorrow I'd need to start making the hard decisions that come with separation and possibly divorce. But tonight I just needed to sit in this quiet motel room and let reality sink in. I'd broken my marriage. Or maybe the marriage had been broken for years, and I'd finally stopped pretending otherwise. Either way, there was no going back from here. Around 2 in the morning, I finally crawled into bed. Danny had migrated to my bed at some point, curled up against my side like he used to do when he was little. I put my arm around him and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Conflict, the messy reality of untangling a life I'd spent 12 years building. But tonight, my son was safe. That was what mattered. That was all that mattered. 2 days later, I sat across from David Warren, family attorney whose office was downtown above the old hardware store. Friend from church recommended him, said he was good and honest, and wouldn't try to bleed me dry. David was maybe 55, gray-haired, had this calm presence that made you feel like maybe things would actually work out. He listened to my whole story without interrupting, taking occasional notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set down his pen and leaned back. First question, do you want to save your marriage? I'd been asking myself that same question for 2 days straight. I want my wife to choose our son over her mother. I want her to see how toxic her family is. I want her to protect Danny instead of feeding him to the wolves. But I trailed off. But you don't think she will? No, I don't. David nodded slowly. Then we need to talk custody. You're currently staying in a motel with your son. That's not sustainable long term. How has Lauren been since you left? Called maybe 20 times. Left a dozen voicemails. Most of them are angry. Some are trying to negotiate me coming back. Wants me to apologize to her mother. Are you going to? Hell no. Good. Don't. David pulled out a fresh legal pad. Here's what we're going to do. First, you're filing for legal separation with a request for temporary primary custody. That establishes a formal arrangement and protects your position. Second, you start documenting everything. Every interaction with Patricia. Every time Lauren chooses her mother over Danny's well-being. Every incident that shows emotional harm. I don't have much documentation so far. Then we start gathering it now. Text messages, voicemails, emails. If Patricia says something inappropriate, write it down immediately with date and time. If Danny tells you something that happened, write that down too. David leaned forward. I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Patricia sounds like someone who won't go down without a fight. She'll turn Lauren against you even more than she already has. They'll paint you as unstable, controlling, trying to isolate Danny from his family. Can you handle that? For Danny? Yeah, I can handle whatever they throw at me. Good, because we're about to find out. The next 3 months were exactly as ugly as David predicted. Lauren filed counter motions. Patricia hired her own lawyer to fight for grandparent visitation rights. They painted me as unstable, controlling, using Danny as a weapon in some vendetta against Patricia. Said I'd overreacted to a minor incident and was trying to isolate my son from his family. But I had documentation. Every text where Lauren prioritized her mother over Danny. Every voicemail where Patricia made passive-aggressive comments. Statements from Danny's teacher about changes in his behavior. Records showing how his confidence had taken hits after Patricia's visits. The court ordered a custody evaluation. Woman named Helen from Family Services interviewed all of us separately. Spent time with Danny. Observed visits. Talked to teachers and people who knew us. Her report was damning for Lauren and Patricia. She noted the pattern of emotional manipulation, the way Patricia used criticism disguised as concern, how Lauren consistently failed to protect Danny from it. The Christmas dinner incident was just the most obvious example of a dynamic that had been harming Danny for years. The temporary custody hearing was intense. Lauren cried on the stand. Patricia played victim perfectly, talking about how much she loved her grandson and how I was keeping him from her out of spite. But Judge Morrison wasn't buying it. This court's primary concern is the child's welfare, she said, looking at Lauren and Patricia over her reading glasses. And the evidence suggests that exposure to Mrs. Bennett's behavior has been detrimental to this child's emotional development. Mr. Riley will maintain primary physical custody. Mrs. Riley will have supervised visitation pending further evaluation. Lauren looked like she'd been slapped. Patricia's face went red with rage. They filed an appeal immediately, but David said it wouldn't go anywhere. The next few months were a cycle of court dates and supervised visits. Lauren saw Danny twice a week at a family services center with a supervisor present. At first, the visits went okay. Danny was happy to see his mother. They'd play games, talk, even laugh sometimes. But then Patricia showed up at the fourth visit. Didn't come inside, just waited in the parking lot. But Danny saw her car. Saw the way Lauren kept glancing toward the window, distracted and anxious. The supervisor noted it in her report. Next visit, Patricia came inside. Stayed in the waiting room, technically separate from the visit, but her presence loomed. Danny became withdrawn. Quiet. Gave short answers. The supervisor ended the visit early and recommended Patricia not be on the premises during any future visits. Things improved after that, but the damage was done. Danny had started to associate seeing his mother with the anxiety of potentially encountering his grandmother, started dreading the visits even though he loved his mom. Then, in March, Lauren violated the court order. She picked Danny up for a supervised visit, but drove straight to Patricia's house instead of the family services center, kept him there for 6 hours. Didn't answer her phone when I called. When she finally brought him back, Danny was shaking and pale. Patricia had spent the entire visit telling him that I'd poisoned everyone against her, that she was the real victim, that I was destroying their family, that if Danny really loved his mother, he'd tell the judge he wanted to live with her. I called David immediately. We filed an emergency motion that same day. The hearing was brief. Judge Morrison was furious. Mrs. Riley, you violated a direct court order. You took your son to precisely the environment this court determined was harmful to him. You exposed him to the person we specifically said he should not be alone with. Can you explain your reasoning? Lauren, looking smaller and more defeated than I'd ever seen her, said quietly, My mother was in crisis. She needed to see her grandson. I thought one visit wouldn't hurt. It did hurt. Your son had nightmares for 3 nights afterward. Your mother used that visit to manipulate him, to try to turn him against his father. That's exactly what this court was trying to prevent. Judge Morrison reduced Lauren's visitation to once weekly, still supervised, made it clear that any further violations would result in complete suspension pending the final hearing. As we left that hearing, I saw Lauren and Patricia in the parking lot. Patricia was berating her daughter, blaming her for not fighting hard enough, for not being strong enough, for letting me win. And Lauren just stood there and took it, like she'd been taking it her whole life. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The final hearing in April was anticlimactic compared to everything that came before. The evidence was overwhelming. Helen's final report recommended I maintain primary custody with unsupervised visitation for Lauren, but strict boundaries around Patricia's involvement. Judge Morrison's final order was clear. I'd have primary physical custody. Lauren could have unsupervised visits. Patricia could only see Danny during specific supervised periods once per month. Everything would be reviewed in 6 months. The divorce was finalized the same day. 12 years of marriage ended with a judge's signature. Walking out of that courthouse for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not happy exactly, not yet, but free. The weight of Patricia's expectations, of Lauren's divided loyalties, of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. All of it was finally gone. 6 months later, the review hearing went smoothly. Danny was thriving, happy, confident in ways he'd never been before. The court made the custody arrangement permanent. Lauren and I are civil now. Not friends, but not enemies. She sees Danny regularly on a schedule that works for everyone. She's learning to set boundaries with her mother, though it's slow going. Patricia tried to challenge the supervised visitation order twice more. Both times the court shut her down. Danny's doing amazing. Joined the science club at school, made some solid friends, stopped apologizing for existing. The kid who used to flinch when someone criticized him now speaks up for himself, sets boundaries, tells people when something bothers him. That's what happens when you teach a kid that he matters, that his feelings are valid, that standing up for himself isn't selfish, it's necessary. As for me, shop's doing better than ever. Got a great crew, rented a decent house near the lake that feels like home. Life is simple, quiet, exactly what we both needed. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.